movie we made after our last year Battle Mountain trip. So I'll show you first because I like movies. Okay. So besides making nice movies, we also make bikes. And why do we make bikes? It is, can I get this back? How do I do it? If I want to see the pictures. Okay, so why do we do this? It is because we really like to race, and we try to find as many places to race as possible. Most teams spend a lot of effort making a bike for ASME, and they race it at ASME, and then they go home and assess how to do it better for ASME next year. What we try to do is continuously race our bike. So we go to a lot of summer races. Here we can see we were at Waterford in Michigan. We raced for a weekend against a lot of other streamliners, mainly built by amateurs. It is a lot of fun because we get a lot of people to race. Everybody in the team races then. You have a field of streamliners. Some riders are almost 80 years old. Some are 25 and they kick your ass. And lately we've gotten better and we kick their ass now. So, but why is it good? It's because you talk with them and you all hang out after the race and you all look at each other's bikes and you all ride each other's bikes and you get a lot of experience. And it is a lot of fun. We go on velodromes near Chicago and we race again. This usually it's a smaller race, but it is a lot of fun to actually have this at speed on a velodrome. And here you can see in this picture we have both our streamliners. That's ACE, our first year, and that's Vortex with the initial paint scheme, which you can see in the back. Then, like I showed, we go to Battle Mountain. And we go to Battle Mountain because we want to be the best in the world. We want to have the world record. We want to be faster than anybody else. This is a 5-mile strip. You can go as fast as you can. At the end of it, 200 meters, they look at your speed. Whoever is faster wins. These are the guys who are the fastest. They're the Varnas. We saw them last year at Indianapolis, if you were lucky enough to see Sam ride it. Velox University, Delft, with their Velox from Netherlands, got to 80 miles per hour last year, barely missing on the world record. So there are a lot of other universities that are trying to do really cool stuff. You can see a comparison, for example, between our Vortex, which is not the biggest bike ever, and the Varna, which is ridiculously small. And then another Dutch bike that is also very fast, and it's new, so they're still refining it. So there's a lot of very high-speed bikes out there and very good people that are doing things. You can see here a shot of all the bikes we raced upon, and it's a lot of fun. I recommend everybody to try to build bikes that are able to go really fast in a straight line or on race courses and at ASME. It is not exclusive. Now, how do we make a small bike? That's, I think, the main technical thing I would like to talk with. First, we started with ACE, which is big. It is probably 4 times bigger than the Varna viewed from the front, or around there. It's huge. And why? Because we took a person's foot, we put it on a crank, we measured kind of how big is the area, that was our area, we measured the shoulders, and we make a bike that you get in and you feel like you have less room than in a Varna. It's ridiculous. Like, first time we went there, we sat in a Varna and we were all blown apart. You had room, you were kind of squished, but it felt a lot more comfortable than our big giant bike. Because, well, they had 20 years of adjusting everything on that bike until you have millimeters of clearance, or like a millimeter clearance between the pilot and everything else. But the pilot doesn't know if it's a millimeter or 2 inches. He's comfortable. Our bike, it was kind of squishing you around the shoulders. The pedals, you had a lot of room, but you didn't care because you wouldn't feel it, and it was huge. So basically, we learned a lot that year about the fact that you can get very close around the person, and they'll still be very comfortable if you notice how they move naturally. So our next question was, okay, how do people move naturally? So that was, I'll show the 3 view. If our steering system had worked last night, I would have had a better presentation, so I apologize. But we came up with Vortex, which is the one in the back. What did we do? We came up with very narrow paddles, 100 millimeters between the cranks, and we came up with very short cranks so we can have a sharp bike. We then took a person, put them on a jig, had them pedal, and we put about 5 centimeters apart cardboard boxes that we kept cutting until the person would not touch them anymore. And then we had a 3D profile of their pedaling position, of their pedaling motion. And that was done under power. So you would get the actual nice motion, not just what they feel like they will do if they're free spinning. So that was really useful because if you look on the inside of Vortex, you will see scratch marks all along the fairing from the buckle of the shoe. That I did not account for. Everything else clears by millimeters. And you pedal and you feel very comfortable. However, it had fairly small cranks, and it was still slightly big and had a bubble canopy, which we didn't agree very well with. The aerodynamics people told me that cannot be done, and the bike should be absolutely tiny and of the shape that's pretty much round. So we came up with this year's bike, where we decided we probably know enough about how the pedal happens so we can make a human model from it. So what I've done, a SolidWorks model of a human where I put the pedals at 8 positions that we measured from last year's Vortex in order to be a lot faster in iterating shapes. So I could send this model to the aero team and they would keep moving things around and they would see, okay, where do the knees reach, where do the shoulders reach, so on. You can see that we tried to pack it as close as we could, obviously, but we didn't try to get a bad arrow shape that is small. We tried to keep the arrow shape as good as possible, so we had to keep iterating between the ergonomics and the arrow people. And then we came, like this human model, what we also did was try it for different size of riders. So it has different configurations, so we can put a small rider in and see how can we move this small person in the bike and still reach the pedals and still see above the transmission and still be able to work the bike. And we had them race today and they fit. And then we had people that were slightly bigger. And we also kept playing around with different configurations to find out how are they actually going to fit properly. So I guess the main takeaway message would be that you first have to find out what is naturally correct for a person to do. And then you have to find out how can you restrict the arrow shape around them without restricting what is natural for them. You have to keep the person happy. If the person doesn't feel in control or is hitting or is unhappy, you will have a slow bike. But if the bike is huge, it's not going to be fast either. Then I think this digital approach is actually pretty good because it allows for fairly fast iterations. We probably should have done a lot more testing on a jig after we came up with a shape, but we had no time at that point. So we ended up relying on what the model said, and we did a couple of measurements to make sure it's somewhat correct. For next year, we're probably going to try to make an even smaller bike somehow. We'll have to see how this one works, and we'll have to see what does the arrow require from the human position, because that is really the critical thing. You're moving the person around to get a good aerodynamic position. So you have to know your arrow, and then you have to know what to ask from the people doing the ergonomics. And then you're going to hopefully have a fast bike that anybody can ride even at ASME on a tight course. So that is all, if anybody has any questions. Yes.
In your design report, you talked about using a simulation.
Yes.
You had a vehicle simulation of riding it and actually use?
So we had a simulation for the handling that was done with JBike 6 and a custom code that I wrote according to the Lords of Chainring book that describes some rules for handling. We were working on a simulation of the actual bike riding down in sim mechanics, but I didn't get that done in time, and we haven't used it yet. Yes. Yes, sorry.
You said you adjusted the crank length and
yes.
What was the final crank length in your this year's vehicle?
So this year was 165. We decided that's the lowest limit to still have good power delivery. Last year it was 142 in Vortex, and that felt quite short. So we tried to go with something that feels better, but the aerodynamics are not compromised by it. Yes?
Are you adjusting your selection based on that crank length, or are you using pretty much the same gear?
We adjusted it. We didn't really get it right the first time at SME, and we only had one gear because they were very high. For Battle Mountain, they actually felt quite okay, but that was in a straight line. So yes, we do look at it, but it's mostly an iteration process. Instead of coming up with a number that we think is right, we come up with a number and then we keep adjusting it also for different people. Yes?
What kind of support and sponsorship do you get to be able to go to all these events that you and people paying out of their own pocket?
For Battle Mountain, yes. We are not able to, well, we haven't yet been able to find sponsors for it. Hopefully this year would be nice. But for Battle Mountain, for the last 2 years, we sent 4 people, and they were the very good riders and dedicated people in the team, and they also were the people that said, okay, you know what, I can put some money into it and go to Battle Mountain and take a week off. And yeah, it was I think, for some of the summer races, we do subsidize as much as we can, but it's usually not fully subsidized either.
How much typically it costs you to build that bike?
I think we have the numbers in the report, which we'll post online. It's probably in material cost, I would expect around 5,000–6,000. We're using the carbon fiber construction. So that is quite a lot. We had some CNC molds done out of foam this year, which we got sponsored. If we would have had to pay for it, those would have been very expensive. But yeah, we usually try not to pay for things that we can get for free, because we don't have that much money. So, yes?
So that's what you have for teams that are having particular
If they happen to be close to one of the summer races in US, then they're lucky and they can go there and learn a lot. So I would say, even if you, like we go camping there and we only pay for gas pretty much. So I would suggest going to one of these races would be very beneficial, even if you have a very small budget. You will learn a lot from people who have family and wife and they can't spend too much money on their bike. So they also look at ways of making it cheap. So I think they taught us a lot of how to make a bike that doesn't cost a lot of money. And you can race over and over again and it's reliable. For example, you can build it out of fiberglass if you cannot afford carbon fiber. You can look for carbon fiber or composites that were for aerospace and have been expired, so they can't sell them anymore. You can, of course, try to find sponsors, but that's easy to say. You can look at, you know, old bike components that you can just put on, and if they work reliably, then it saves you a lot of money instead of investing on very expensive components. So I would say, yeah. Yes?
Do you do any physical training for competition?
Some of us do, yes. Well, as in, we have a couple of people on the team that are very involved with rugby and with speed skating, so they are very much athletes, not just building things. We try to have the whole team ride, and what we do is we usually have training days where we take like a normal recumbent and race around, or one of the last year's bikes and race around. Now we managed to get a power meter in the bike room so we can actually have people do tests and see what their power levels are. We haven't really managed to coordinate that very well to do it for everybody. But I think we're a pretty new team, so a lot of this we're kind of learning ourselves, but we're getting in the mentality of we have to be trained, not only have a bike. So slowly we are getting more physical training. Yes. Any other questions?
Questions?